Wee woo, red alert, panic, run for the hills, fire, disaster, save yourself, is what I would be saying if I thought this card was that crazy. Hey, what's up everybody? So, we're talking about Divine Blessing. It just got revealed today. I'm doing a one card spoiler video on it because I want to talk about this card now, because I think people are kind of overvaluing it or severely undervaluing it. And I think it's somewhere in the middle there. So let's just go over the card and talk about, honestly, why I don't think it's that great. But I also think that some people might undervalue it too. Divine Blessing. It is a 1-cost asterisk counter rune. It can only be cast when an opponent activates an invoke rune. Disenchant 1 from your field in order to negate that rune. What do you do with this? You stop Earthquake, you stop Ambrosia. What other invoke runes are really being run right now that are relevant? Nothing. Going forward, this could stop Rise from the Depths. It could stop Race to the Top. Laurels, I guess it also hits. Actually, it is a pretty good counter to the Laurels. We'll get into that later. Thunderstorm. So on average, it's going to be hitting Earthquake or Laurels and Ambrosia in most decks. That's honestly pretty good. You're usually Earthquaking something that you need to get off the board ASAP. Something like a Twindra, a Penterror, maybe a Sonicore, you know. So preventing something like Earthquake from landing, not relevant in Sonicore case, can be pretty advantageous for the player who's using Divine Blessing. However, Divine Blessing doesn't just cost 1 spirit. It causes you to be, or rather, you are forced to disenchant to use it. If you have a Divine Rune, great. So this going into a Nexus deck makes a ton of sense. You put in Wind Nexus, you put in Thunder Nexus, you have Zeus, Aeolus out, maybe put in Earth Beaters with the Demeter out, though that's a little less consistent. You can prevent Earthquake from taking out your Elechick, taking out your Rabbit, taking out your Exaltair and whatnot. In Thunder Nexus, if you have Elechick in play, or sorry, not Elechick, Sparkit in play, Sparkit already gets rid of Earthquake, so I don't think it's super relevant. The best deck it's going to be in would be probably Thunder Nexus. Thunder Nexus already has ways to deal with Earthquake and resting on your laurels, unless they top deck it. It's slightly less relevant. In other Nexus decks, I think we're going to see a Water Nexus deck with Drutaqua. We're going to see a Wind Nexus probably pop off with Exaltair and Nemisail. Sure, put Divine Blessing in there, prevent an Earthquake. That sounds great. Now, my biggest cons of this card are, A, compared to Chains of Prometheus, Chains of Prometheus has 12 plus targets to stop in a turn. Divine Blessing has about tops 6 hits that is going to stop your opponent from using. That being maybe a full suite of Earthquakes and Ambrosias, or maybe a couple Earthquakes, a couple Laurels, some Ambrosias, maybe a 1 of Thunderstorm it might stop. But if it's Thunderstorm, it might just hit Divine Blessing face down and you go, up, wasn't going to use that anyway now. So it's stopping Earthquake and Ambrosia, 6 cards in your opponent's deck. Again, Chain stops like 12 to 15, maybe even as much as 18 counter runes in a deck. Chains has got way more versatility and targets to hit. Divine Blessing, less targets. First con I have for it. Second con I have for it, you have to disenchant off your board. So if you're not playing an Nexus deck or can't get a Divine Rune out, you're generally sacrificing a continuous card in play to play Divine Blessing, making this potentially a 2-for-1 to stop a 1-from-1, right? So if they're using an Earthquake, Earthquake 1s-for-1s. If you need to use Divine Blessing to save something, let's say you have Astrabbit and Exaltair in play, you have to either sacrifice Exaltair to Divine Blessing to stop the Earthquake from the Rabbit, or let the Rabbit just go and they have Exaltair in play. So you're still losing a card. And if you use Divine Blessing, you're now losing 2 cards for 1 card. On the best case scenario, you're using it off a Divine Rune and you 1-for-1. Cool. But you're 1-for-1ing on your opponent's turn, who can now say, my Earthquake didn't land. Let me rethink my strategy. Let me figure something else out. Or, hey, they're face down with the Divine Blessing, they're now more open to get attacked by my other options to remove that creature or that Elestral from play. So because it's on your opponent's turn, they can work around like, okay, I got Divine Blessing, let me see what I can do now. They have 1 less counter option to deal with my board. Maybe now I can throw a Thunderstorm out, or maybe now I play my P-Gust and know that I knock out the other counter rune that's not going to be the bluff or not the Divine Blessing and attack over it. So I think playing Divine Blessing, you're losing out on that defense that you can use on your opponent's turn to then proactively take advantage of on your turn. Whereas when you're playing Divine Blessing, you're using on your opponent's turn, and now because there's an Invoke rune that they used, they're still in their main phase, they can play around the Divine Blessing, whiffing their Earthquake, whiffing their Laurels. Maybe they have another card. Maybe they used Earthquake. You just had to 2-for-1 by sacrificing an Elestral on board to cast Divine Blessing, and now they have another follow-up to hit over, and they can adapt to the turn that they're in because it's their turn. That's another big con I have for it. So that's kind of 3 cons. It's kind of a 2-for-1 in a lot of cases. You might not have the Spirit to disenchant. It still is on your opponent's main phase, giving them more options to react to it, as opposed to if this maybe landed in their end phase or something, or on your turn. And it reduces your options for counter runes and defensive options. Something like Shield, something like Poisoned Arrow, etc. Gorgon's Gaze to prevent more Elestral effects from happening. So, I don't think this card's as great or crazy as people think it is. That's just kind of where I land. Like, let me know if you think differently, but I definitely think this has a place in certain decks, particularly Nexus decks, and perhaps Nexus decks that go taller. Because if you have to 2-for-1, or you have extra spirits on a card, like let's say you put this into play behind an Emperor Watt. So you go board wipe Emperor Watt, it has 7 spirits on it, so you disenchant 3, it's got 1 extra, you play Divine Blessing behind it to stop Earthquake. Now we're talking. But if you're just playing this in just a regular like beatdown deck or 5 guys or Nexus deck, yeah, you gotta make it work. And to make it work, I think, is not worth it when you have to take away some of the strength of the counter runes that you have to defend your stuff, to try to defend your stuff from Invoke runes. We see Bag of Winds used now, but Bag of Winds prevents all targeting, so they have to find a way to deal with Bag of Winds and then proactively deal with your Elestral, meaning they need to get 2 cards to get through Bag of Winds, maybe more. Divine Blessing, same amount, but I don't know. I don't think it's as crazy. I think it's good. Don't get me wrong. I think it's usable, maybe as a 2 of, maybe as a 1 of, maybe it's a sideboard option against Invoke heavy decks like Fruit or Thunderstorm decks with Fun Glow. But if you look at our current meta, and you want to tell me that in our current meta, adding Divine Blessing is insanely powerful, I think you are wrong. I think as we go forward, it's going to be better with things like 3-drops that get into play with 4 spirits, like a Volt Tempest, it would be solid in. A Nexus deck strategy, it would be solid in. Things like extra ways to protect things from Invoke runes is great. Just not, you do 3 of this, you maybe 2 of this, you probably 1 of this. Even then, now you're looking at something that might not even land because your opponent might not even draw their Earthquake or Ambrosias for the game. And if you're stopping an Ambrosia, you have to be in the lead already to make stopping an Ambrosia worth it in most cases. So your best thing is stopping a removal card from removing something, but in the end you're still having Divine Blessing get removed. And the Divine Blessing could have been a removal card in its own. Like if Divine Blessing here, this could just be an Earthquake to get rid of their Elestral in the crack pack. That's my TED Talk. That's what I think of Divine Blessing. Yes, I like it. I think it'll have a place. I just don't think it's as crazy as the people in Discord are making it sound. Alright, that's all I have for you today. Like, subscribe, etc. I'll see you guys in the next spoiler video. I just really want to talk about Divine Blessing. Yeah, have a good one.